Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andy Rymack, and I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Western Ontario. It's a rare opportunity to introduce someone as accomplished and distinguished an engineer, academic, and trailblazer as Dr. Arden Bement. Since late 2004, Dr. Bement has served as Director of the National Science Foundation. In this role, he administers a budget of more than $6 billion, hundreds of programs that support an estimated 200,000 engineers, scientists, educators, and students, and the development of world-class facilities and infrastructure. In addition, he oversees a large and robust international research program and several international partnerships to build sophisticated research and experimental facilities. These efforts have two overarching aims: to strengthen America's innovation and economic positions, and the ability of the U.S. workforce to operate in a high-tech global economy. Before his appointment as Director of the National Science Foundation, Dr. Bement held several other distinguished positions in industry, government, and academia, including Director of the National Institute of Standards and Technology and Head of the School of Nuclear Engineering at Purdue University. Dr. Bement has received numerous accolades, including 4 honorary doctorates and an honorary professorship from the Chinese Academy of Sciences Graduate School. In 2009, he was awarded the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Star by the Emperor of Japan. He is a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. In addition, he's a retired Lieutenant Colonel of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and a recipient of the Distinguished Service Medal of the Department of Defense. Dr. Bement holds an Engineer of Metallurgy degree from the Colorado School of Mines, a master's degree in metallurgical engineering from the University of Idaho, and a doctorate in metallurgical engineering from the University of Michigan. On June 1st, he will take up a new post as the founding director of Purdue University's Global Policy Research Institute. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Bement as a speaker today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bement.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and good morning to all of you. It's my very great pleasure to be here today and to talk to you about the synergy between engineering research and public policy in the U.S. as well as in Canada, and how it's leading to tangible advances in the quality of life for all of us. As you know, and as has been pointed out, I currently serve as the Director of the National Science Foundation. For those of you who may not be familiar with the organization of the U.S. government, I will just say, by way of shorthand, that NSF is a federal agency whose mandate is to support fundamental research in science, mathematics, and engineering, as well as STEM education from K to 12 through postgraduate. NSF does that through grants, primarily to individual investigators at institutions of higher education. In that sense, we're a very much bottom-up organization. The impetus of much of what we do comes from those most directly involved in advancing the frontiers of their individual disciplines. That said, my professional background is in engineering. So while I had the premier U.S. research agency whose very name emphasizes science, and while I work daily alongside scientists of every description, engineering has figured prominently in my education and training and throughout my professional life. As an engineer who works daily with and among scientists, I can see the wisdom of Einstein's take on science versus engineering. The great theoretical physicist once said that scientists investigate that which already is, engineers create that which has never been. I think that's as neat and as pithy a one-sentence encapsulation of the difference between science and engineering as I have ever heard. Despite my love for engineering and respect for engineers, I can also see the humor in this quote from Scott Adams, the author of the wonderful and witty Dilbert comic strip about the nature of engineers and engineering. Normal people believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, says Adams, whose background, by the way, is in economics. Engineers, he adds, believe that if it ain't broke, it doesn't have enough features yet. I hope my talk today will be more along the high-minded lines of Einstein's sentiments than Adam's wit. First, I want to explain a bit about NSF, its role in the U.S. government's support of engineering research and education, and how it helps to infuse the wisdom and practical skills of engineering into the realm of public policy. Despite Scott Adams' witticism, I assert that engineers often are uniquely suited by dint of their education and training to develop solutions too often seemingly intractable problems that will make a better world for all of us. In that connection, I think it's significant to note that in addition to my academic background, I spent quite some time in private industry, including as a vice president for science and technology at TRW Incorporated. I can say, therefore, with some certainty that when major private companies in the U.S., those in the Fortune 100, recruit senior managers, they often look for those who have some background in engineering, along with advanced degrees in business and management. That's because an education in engineering provides an immeasurable advantage, the ability to analyze complex problems and come up with workable solutions, and truly understand how innovation works and what it takes to innovate successfully. Engineers operate with one foot in the realm of science and the other in the realm of problem solving, and that is a very valuable combination of skills to possess. Moreover, that skill set is needed today, not just in what might seem in the public mind to encompass the traditional and appropriate engineering fields of bridge building and designing vehicles, for example, but also finding solutions to big, complex, and even global problems that plague all of us. Engineering today is not just envisioning ways to build taller skyscrapers, but creating solutions to problems of sequestering climate change and carbon dioxide emissions. It's not just designing the components of a new aircraft engine, but coming up with ways to secure cyberspace against a host of murky threats aimed at the very foundations of our societies. It's not just devising a new circuit board, but creating more effective medicines and new and more ingenious methods for delivering them. For example, surely one of the most pressing problems facing the world today is how to move away from fossil fuel-based petroleum products to new and more sustainable forms of energy. In answer to that challenge, 8 interdisciplinary research teams supported by NSF's Engineering Directorate, the Directorate's Office of Emerging Frontiers of Research and Innovation, are conducting fundamental investigations into the production of hydrocarbons from biomass through a number of approaches, including fermentation, pyrolysis, synthetic biology, and catalysis. First-generation biofuels have been hampered by a range of factors, from incompatibility and lower energy yields to concerns about their potential impacts on food prices and issues concerning soil nutrient and water sustainability. A new second-generation biofuel known as cellulosic gasoline, or green gasoline, or even gasohol, is positioned, I shouldn't say gasohol, but green gasoline, is positioned to bridge these gaps and eventually provide gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel identical to petroleum counterparts. Derived from non-food plants and agricultural waste, green gasoline has the same performance and functionality as petroleum-derived fuels, yet it fits into an existing infrastructure. Virant Energy Systems, a company based in Madison, Wisconsin, used NSF funding to develop a method for processing sugars and carbohydrates like petroleum into a full suite of precursors that drive the fuel, pharmaceutical, and chemical industries. Another NSF-funded researcher, James Dumesic at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, separately discovered the same process known as aqueous phase reforming. In passing a watery slurry of plant-derived sugar and carbohydrates over a series of catalysts, carbon-rich organic molecules split apart into component elements which, when combined, form many of the chemicals that are extracted from non-renewable petroleum. In March 2010, Virant and Shell Oil began using the process at a demonstration plant that can produce up to 10,000 gallons per year of biogasoline and gasoline blend components. Virant is continuing to develop the process with a $2.4 million grant from the Department of Energy through the National Advanced Biofuels Consortium. These are but practical examples of how U.S. government-funded research and engineering is addressing a vital policy issue, the need to dramatically decrease fossil fuel dependence while at the same time addressing important problems in economic and environmental sustainability. At this juncture, as I'm discussing how engineers are tackling problems of global significance, I would just add that NSF puts a premium on programs that integrate research and education and encourages thinking in the global context. The globalization of science and engineering advancements has had very real consequences for the way in which research is conducted through international collaboration and interdisciplinary approaches. I believe these trends will only intensify in the future. I think it's safe to say that integrating research and education has helped put U.S. and Canadian universities in the first rank globally. But the situation is changing, and changing rapidly. Other countries are adopting this approach of investing in a balanced portfolio of research, education, and infrastructure in their universities because they see the power of research and education as a driver of economic growth. Meanwhile, according to NSF's biennial Science and Engineering Indicators report, the rate of growth of research investment in these other parts of the world is spectacular. The current rate of growth in research in the U.S. and the European Union is currently about 6% per year. But in Asia as a whole, the rate is 10% per year, and in China is 20%. This rapid growth means that the U.S. share of global research input and output is decreasing. This is also true for North America generally. With the rise of the research capacity of Asian nations, North America faces a challenge of being an inclusive player and collaborator rather than an independent competitor. That is, to be a good teammate in global collaborations and to show outstanding sportsmanship in research competition, whatever that means. But to remain competitive as a region, we must also stay at the vanguard of scientific and engineering discoveries. That will be our challenge as the 21st century unfolds. We must adapt to a multipolar world where we are but one academic and scientific powerhouse among others. Certainly one essential element in any strategy for competitiveness is to learn how to excel through international collaborations. Now, to help you better understand how policy and research come together at one federal science agency, let me say a few more words about what NSF is, what it does, and how it works to enable engineering innovators to turn good ideas into practical solutions. NSF is an agency unique within the U.S. federal government, and it's important that I make it clear why that is before we talk about engineering innovation in the United States. NSF is not like a mission agency such as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration or NASA. We do not, like NASA, for example, run a space program, or like NOAA, manage a National Weather Service. We are similar to NSERC and have a broad and sweeping mandate to support the best ideas in science, engineering, and mathematics research. However, NSF also has a mandate to support research in STEM education at all levels. It is important to be clear that NSF is not the only agency within the U.S. federal government that supports basic research. Depending upon the particular problem or government need that is being addressed, funding for a particular project may come from other agencies, such as NASA, the U.S. Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, or the National Institutes of Health. Given the interdisciplinarity of research nowadays, it can even come from a combination of several agencies collaborating on a single project. So while I can speak with a great deal of specificity about NSF's role in supporting engineering research, I should just like to be clear that I am not necessarily representing U.S. government policy as a whole, which properly is the purview of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, or OSTP. NSF is divided into directorates through which we channel our annual budget into research grants. The annual budget for the Engineering Directorate in fiscal year 2009, to give you a sense of the level of investment, was roughly $690 million out of a total NSF budget of roughly $7 billion. Our support for engineering research is divided by the directorate into various categories of support, such as chemical, bioengineering, or transport systems, to industrial innovation and partnerships, to emerging frontiers in research and innovation. Engineering education also is a priority for the directorate, as is enhancing U.S. competitiveness through support for engineering research centers, partnerships, small business enterprises, and programs that foster innovation in academic institutions generally. For the most part, as I said, NSF grants are made to individual investigators at institutions through a merit review process that seeks out proposals that meet two specific criteria: exceptional academic merit and well thought out plans for sharing the impacts of the research with society as a whole. We view ourselves largely as a very investigator-driven institution in that sense. But it is also true that many of our programs dovetail neatly with national priorities, such as the Obama administration's support for innovation and its overall strategy to increase the nation's total research and development investment to 3% of the U.S. gross domestic product. We are extremely heartened, for example, to learn late last month that a recently released White House request for information on commercialization of university-developed technologies specifically mentioned that the long-standing NSF Partnerships for Innovation program, which is managed by our engineering directorate, is an exemplar of promoting innovation. By encouraging these types of partnerships between academia, industry, and local government, even though a relatively small program, such as PFI, which has a budget of only roughly $19 million, our investments have a multiplier effect in both the research and policy realms at local and state levels, while simultaneously meeting national needs. On another front, just this week, NSF's Engineering Directorate, in partnership with the U.S. Department of Commerce and the National Institutes of Health, announced a new $12 million innovation competition to drive technology commercialization and entrepreneurship. This new program is very much in line with the administration's emphasis on innovation and is designed to support and reward innovative approaches to turning ideas into new products and businesses that help America compete in the global economy. As Thomas Peterson, NSF's Assistant Director for Engineering, noted, small businesses make vital economic and technological contributions to the innovation ecosystem. NSF supports small businesses to encourage advances in biotechnology, nanotechnology, information technology, educational applications, and other areas of national importance. So as you can see, NSF very much balances its bottom-up support for individual investigators with efforts to drive innovation from the top down as part of a larger national innovation strategy. Perhaps the best way to view our support for engineering innovation is to think of the interaction between policy and research as a two-way street. The engineering community often, with NSF support, but deliberately independently, helps develop broad-scale policy options and recommendations for policymakers, identifying gaps in our national research agenda. Individual researchers bring to us research proposals designed to fill those gaps. A prime example of that approach is a report that was issued in 2008 by an 18-member Blue Ribbon panel of experts convened by the National Academy of Engineering, or NAE, as at NSF's request. The committee's report, Grand Challenges in Engineering, delineated 14 specific areas in which engineering can contribute to making the world, I quote, not only a more technologically advanced and connected place, but also a more sustainable, safe, healthy, and joyous place. Time doesn't permit me a lengthy discussion of the ways in which NSF-funded basic research overlaps with these 14 grand challenges, but I think a few examples will illustrate the point I had earlier made that the engineering community as a whole, through mechanisms such as the report suggests, identify policy directions, while investigators across a range of disciplines propose the best ideas of how to turn those recommendations into reality. So, for example, one of the report's 14 recommendations was to make solar energy economical. Recently, with NSF funding, engineers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have successfully created a sophisticated yet affordable method to turn ordinary glass into a high-tech solar concentrator. The technology, which uses dye-coated glass to collect and channel photons otherwise lost from the solar panel's surface, could eventually enable an office building to draw energy from its tinted windows as well as its roof. The researchers coat glass panels with layers of 2 or more light-capturing dyes. The dyes absorb incoming light and then re-emit the light into the glass, which serves as a conduit to channel the light to solar cells along the panel's edges. The dyes can vary from bright colors to chemicals that are almost transparent to visible light. Because the edges of the glass panels are so thin, far less semiconductor material is needed to collect the light energy and convert that energy into electricity. The NAE report also encouraged explorations into advancing personalized learning. NSF is committed to make transformative discoveries in cyber learning, that is, using network computing and communications technologies to support learning. Cyber learning offers opportunities to redistribute learning throughout the waking hours and throughout a lifetime, and to provide access to those who might otherwise be barred from valuable learning experiences. Learning experiences can be tailored to individuals and to groups with shared characteristics such as personality, learning style, culture, and ability, as well as be adaptive to changing student states such as emotion, level of engagement, and level of understanding. As cyber learning grows as a mechanism for learning, we are able to turn our sights to understanding what and why people learn well and don't learn well in both the cyber world and the classroom. Another of the 14 recommendations was to reverse engineer the brain. Along these lines, NSF's Computer and Information Science and Engineering Directorate is supporting research into cyber physical systems. Possible outcomes of this research are systems that respond more quickly, which have applications in autonomous collision avoidance, which can enable precise robotic surgery and nanotolerance manufacturing, that work autonomously in dangerous or inaccessible environments for search and rescue, firefighting, and exploration, that provide large-scale distributed coordination, for example, automated traffic control, that are highly efficient, for example, zero net energy buildings, or that augment human capabilities and enhance social well-being, such as assistive technologies and ubiquitous healthcare monitoring and delivery. These capabilities will be realized by deeply embedding computational intelligence, communication, control, and new mechanisms for sensing, actuation, and adaptation into physical systems with active and reconfigurable components. Another recommendation of the report was to engineer better medicines. Research led by Vadim Bachman of Northwestern University, for example, is investigating the use of spectroscopy for very early detection of cancer. Bachman's method uses nanoscale changes in molecular disorder within cell nuclei. His approach has identified precancerous changes indicating pancreatic cancer, for which we currently have no good detection tool, colon cancer to include detecting cancers that colonoscopy has missed, and other cancers such as lung cancer. The probe can even detect such changes in tissue adjacent to cancerous or precancerous cells, which means that doctors could perform cancer screening in the office by analyzing tissue in a more accessible part of the body. I could, of course, continue down the list and provide examples for quite some time, but I think the examples that I've given help to illustrate how the synergy between engineering research and public policy in the U.S. is even now leading to tangible advances in fields as disparate as human health, renewable energy, environmental remediation, and the improvement of learning. In summary, I believe that engineers will continue to be change masters in the 21st century and will continue to provide inputs to decision makers about the social and economic impacts of emerging technologies. Thank you.
We have about 10 minutes now for questions in there, and if you could please line up at microphones 1, 2, and 3, and we'll go through there. So, see, Wagi's already there, so Wagi, take it away.
Yeah, well, I've enjoyed Dr. Bement's talk today, as well as previous talks I've attended that included a lot of excellent slides as well. But I guess if it's about public policy, we don't need the slides. My questions...
I'll give you an answer to that in a moment.
My question really is a serious one relating to science, engineering, policy, and politics as well. Well, as you know, the whole world, and Canada also included, is influenced by decisions made in the U.S. and the politics of the U.S. So with regard to what is happening in Canada at the moment, there is one disturbing trend, but I think it's also a trend worldwide. So I don't know the origin of it, and certainly would be interested in your opinion. The linking of the research with applications is, of course, excellent and needed everywhere, and the involvement of industry. However, in Canada, within Nsf that you have referred to, we had one particular program that was called Basic Research, as you have it in the US, but actually the name was changed to Discovery Research. Mm-hmm. And our great pride was that that program funded a large percentage of the engineers in Canadian system, which is a good quality system and all of good quality. The success rate was about 90%. The disturbing trend now is that they are going towards a 30% success rate, and referring to the fact that this is what it is at Nsf, and also that it is in the social sciences program in Canada. The reason it's disturbing because you have excellent engineering schools with excellent researchers. Only 30% on average would be funded. They have already achieved the 50% success rate, going down. I think it's a disaster, yes. Not only for Canada, but for the world. And I see that in many countries. I think it's really still important to have these big breakthroughs, not only in science, but in engineering, to have one small program that is just seed money.
Yes.
Your opinion?
Oh, my opinion is I fully agree with you. You know, we keep redefining what basic research is. For example, in the United States, we have the term solution-based research, or transformative research, which is supposed to transform whole new fields or paradigms. We established an office that provides seed funding for expanding frontiers in fundamental research in engineering. But those programs are determined by the community at large. The grand challenge problems, the ones that have greatest promise for establishing a salient at the frontier and moving the frontier forward. Fortunately, the Congress now has caught the bug. They've now mandated, believe it or not, mandated that 5% of the total NSF budget be used for very high-risk research, high-risk, high-return research, transformative research, which gives me an opportunity to even spend more money on basic research. So it's critically important. We can continue to move down the learning curve, and we can spend more and more money on moving down the learning curve, but we also have to continually generate new concepts, whole new ideas, if we're going to maintain our economic viability. Because it's not the technologies of today or the industries of the day that are going to make the future. It's going to be the ideas and the concepts of the future. Going back to the reason I'm not using PowerPoint, we had an eminent mathematician who won the Waterman Award for developing a games conjecture, which is an approach to pure mathematics that will determine which very complex problems can be solved by a fast algorithm or a slow algorithm or no algorithm at all. He was in the middle of his presentation. It was all on PowerPoint slides. And he was just about to come to the climax of how this conjecture worked when the power went out. And we had a 20-minute hiatus, which totally destroyed his whole presentation. So I'm a little bit gun-shy of PowerPoint slides.
Very good. Oh, sorry, can you just turn on? Yeah. Thank you. I've got a quick question. Oh, sorry, go ahead from microphone 3.
The U.S. Once funded fast neutron breeder reactors to provide huge amounts, that would provide huge amounts of electricity and power and energy, and recycle the used fuel from normal reactors, like water reactors that we currently use. When is the policy, or is it going to change, to restore this, completing the development of these fast breeder reactors, especially the integral fast reactor at Argonne?
That's a very good question. It's not yet on the horizon. I think we're going to restart our nuclear industry, which is a very important first step. But somehow we've got to take a realistic stance on closing our fuel cycle. Using a disposable fuel cycle is not economically viable. It's not in the best interest for waste management. So going back to fast breeder reactors, I have a personal interest in that because I was a manager leading a fuels and materials sector at Hanford Laboratories when we were developing the Fast Flux Test Facility, which was one of the leading fast reactors at that time. And of course, in those days, I thought this was the way of the future. And it reminds me of the fusion scientist who died and went to heaven. And because of his eminence in his field, he was given an opportunity to have an audience with God. And he said, God, he said, I don't want to be presumptive, but will future energy ever become economically viable? And God said, yes, but not in my lifetime.
Sure, microphone one, Ray, please.
Sure. Is there any research done on trying to quantify the consumption of energy as far as what are the biggest areas of usage, such as, what's the collective aspect of home heating? How much of the energy goes towards heat? Such.
Yes.
And what's behind the question is there's a lot of work being done on solar voltaic cells and such, but there's also solar heat tubes and other things. And it would seem to make sense to try and capture the heat and directly turn around and use it in the same form rather than going through all the losses of conversion and things. So along with that then goes whether there's any research in being able to come up to some kind of a storage technique for all that heat,
Yes.
such as underground systems and such. So I'm curious if there's anything going on in those areas.
The answer is yes. Again, in our Emerging Frontiers program, we are very much interested in energy storage and also conservation and reuse. The reason for that is if we're going to fully utilize clean renewable energy, we have to assure energy supply on a continuous basis, which means there has to be a buffer in the system somewhere when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Now, there are two ways of doing storage. One is centrally and one is in a distributed fashion. A distributed way would be to put ultra-high capacitors in connection with the device at the endpoint so that the energy is stored for longer periods of time than you can get for a battery, for example, and more efficiently. And this is where the smart grid comes in, trying to determine how to balance out the load factors and the distribution factors in a very complex grid where you have different types of use, whether it's residential, whether it's business, or whether it's industry. Those are entirely different equations of state. More directly, we also fund a lot of fundamental research on how nature works, and not only absorbing but using energy and storing energy. And this gets right down to the microorganism level. And through fields of biomimetics, or through the application of biomimetics, we're finding ways to transfer what nature does very, very efficiently into other types of devices, engineered devices. So we're trying to make that coupling between the biosciences and the engineering sciences to use biomimetics as a way of mimicking nature and the use and distribution of energy.
Good. We had a question at the back. If you could come up to the mic, please.
I will speak few minutes, but it will work billion of dollars. I immigrated into Canada about 14 years ago, and before I immigrated, I designed many power plants, hydropower plants and other plants, and I was teaching at the university how to design these plants. Here in Canada, I was lucky to meet a friend at the University of Toronto, Professor Brian Carney, and we introduced a new course to the students, design of hydropower plants, as the only course offered to the students in North America. And I would like to speak something about the next step we should do, and that will be my question as well. We introduce at the university the basic knowledge, but to have an expert, we need a huge step, because at the university we introduce approximately 5% of knowledge. And we need institutions to transfer this knowledge to the new generation and to fill all these gaps and what we lost. So to explain what I really want is a center of excellence of our institutions, probably for fluid mechanics or physics or something like that, hydroelectric plants in application, and it should be established. $100 million per year is a low price. Each doctor, engineer, specialist should spend 1 or 2 years in this institution to learn fluid mechanics. First, oil spill in the Mexican Gulf, oil flow in the pipes, problem of high-level fluid mechanics, mathematics, and hydraulic transients, vibrations and resonance. Do we have institutional center of excellence? No. How many Canadians suffer heart disease, have trouble with blood circulations and blood vessels? Also the problem of high-level fluid mechanics. Ontario blackout 2003, price $10 billion. Nuclear plants have 25 hydraulic systems. Pickering A refurbishment originally was $800 million, and at the end it was $2.5 billion, 3 times the original. The disastrous pressure tube rupture in 1983, $1 billion. Do we have institution and center to teach experts? No. India, combined cycle power plant designed by Western companies, calling water troubles. Niagara Tunnel, $1 billion in 2007, $1.6 billion in 2009. Money could have built 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts of big storage plants underground as well. 500 megawatts maybe of medium plants, including transmission lines, or 100 megawatt small plants. The US harbored hydroelectric plant accidents never published. The US pump turbine Richard Russell pump storage plant are insufficiently submerged and model insufficiently tested. China, 3 watch projects, 3 famous Western company involved.
Could I ask you to ask the question? A question for the speaker, please.
The question is to organize such an institution which will be able to learn people to save this money and to manage all this in proper way. I can give you some more, if we have time, some more examples why it is important. I prepared a flyer which I put everywhere if you would like to see some more details. And it is linked to the article on the website describing why we need such a high-level institution to manage all these problems. If you would like, I can give some additional problems showing how many billions we can save. Okay. So my question is to form a team, to initiate something like that, to organize, because that covers knowledge of different in medicine, engineering, aircraft, water transportation system, and so on. Idea is to form it, to manage that, and to save billions of dollars. Okay. Thank you for.
No, it's a very important question, and to address it, it has to be addressed at about 4 different levels. At the very early level, it's introducing engineering into the schools as far as decision making. Understanding what engineers do, teaching design, and also learning that engineering solutions don't always work. So we have an initiative, which is a pre-K to 5 initiative, introducing engineering at the very early stage. I think the second level is to carry on more interdisciplinary research, especially at the university level, and bringing in the social sciences and bringing in other sectors to engage in the research so that when options are prepared for decision makers, they consider the broad implications of social and economic factors, the human factor, into some of the technology issues. The third level is establishing policy institutes that can engage the private sector with university investigators in trying to form the bridge between engineering and science and public policy. And that's a two-way street in the sense that it's first of all informing the policymakers of what is evolving in terms of science and technology that can provide potential solutions to very major problems. The other, which is the other direction, is first of all to identify where there are policy gaps that if the research could be done would help fill the policy gap. And that's the primary mission of the Global Policy Research Institute at Purdue University that I'll be privileged to direct starting the 1st of June. In all the various sectors that you were talking about, all the major sectors of global policy issues. But I can say that Purdue is only one of 500 such policy issues at U.S. universities that are attempting to do the same thing. So it's spread across many sectors of our country. The fourth level is to engage high-level policymakers in learning what engineering and science can provide in the way of solutions. One way is to get more members of Parliament, more members of the Congress who are scientists and engineers. That's almost in the too hard category. We have some, but not enough. The other is to pepper the staff, the congressional staff or the parliamentary staff, with people who have scientific and engineering backgrounds. And in that regard, the American Association for the Advancement in Science, through their Congressional Fellows Program, has played a major role over the years in providing almost 200 staff members. I mean, that started out as interns and are now staff members in the Congress. I've also been aware of and have participated in cross-sector seminars. One in particular, which is sponsored by George Mason University, where they take federal judges. They go to Tucson every summer and they spend a week listening to and interacting with top leading scientists and engineers. And the reason the federal judges are so interested, they want to know where the precedents, where the challenges, the legal challenges are coming down the road. They want to anticipate 5 years in advance what new legislation, what new laws are likely to impact their activities. So those are many of the ways in which I think we can get a much better public understanding of what these interfaces are between science, engineering, and public policy.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to call on Dean Rymark to do the thanks, and thank you very much for an extremely informative presentation.
Well, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Bement for his address to us today. I think more than in the title of a two-way street, what I heard today was a roadmap, a network that includes innovation, education, entrepreneurship, investment in research infrastructure, and environmental sustainability of all our solutions, of all the solutions that we think of from a technological point of view. So on behalf of the group,